Good day and welcome to Sincerely John again. We're in the middle of chapter 11. We just saw Lazarus raised from the dead, and it's about to be the catalyst of a great onslaught on Jesus' life, which is going to lead all the way to the cross. And we saw how Jesus held back coming to Lazarus in the start of this chapter until there was really humanly no more hope.
Yeah.
And at that moment, the glory of a man raised from the dead 4 days later.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Imagine being a witness of that.
Yes, and it sounds like there were a big crowd of witnesses
Yeah.
around at that moment. All those mourners who were already there for consoling the family.
Yeah, and as I mentioned in the last session, thinking like that statement where Jesus says, take the grave clothes off. I often read it as a supernatural thing, like he was speaking to the cloths to come off, which is completely possible. He just raised a dead man, But imagine the people rushing over, like Mary and Martha just taking it off.
Yes.
You see, is it really him?
Yes.
This is a magic trick, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But it was him,
Yeah.
Because all throughout, Lazarus doesn't say a word.
No.
We don't hear him say anything.
No. What does that say for Lazarus raised from the dead without faith?
Yeah.
This is Jesus speaking into it, and he just calls on those with him, Mary, Martha, believe, come on, and you will see something
faith,
great.
Right?
Yeah.
So God, it's past that time for you.
That's glorious.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
let's start reading. In our last discussion, it was a long discussion. We just came to the end. Let's recap over that, because I do want to touch on how Jesus prays here.
Yeah.
And the fact that he wants the people around him to hear that he's speaking to the Father, so that they know this is happening because of prayer.
Yeah.
So from verse 40, Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me." What if Jesus did not say it out loud? Would the Father still hear him?
Yeah.
That's obvious out of it. He's saying, I'm saying it so that they can hear, not so that you can hear. So praying under my breath or praying in my heart, God knows my thoughts. It's just beautiful, the confirmation of that. God would have heard him. I'm saying it loud so that they could hear. But then for what reason does he want them to hear it? So that when this man is walking out of the grave right now, they know it's in response to prayer. This man is raised because there was a conversation between Jesus and the Father. I mean, that's what he wants them to know.
Yeah.
Okay? I want you guys to know that when you speak to the Father, he hears you, and you must expect something is about to happen because I spoke to the Father. It's incredible. And then also just that there's faith in that must grow. Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." So think about it. Jesus just spoke to God the Father. Lazarus is already alive in the grave, because this is a man that's about to hear with his ears and respond to it, to come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave cloths, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. Let's just hang there a moment before we go to 45, when the persecution kicks up. Just what it looks like when a guy like that comes out with a headcloth. Where am I?
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine it from his perspective.
Yeah.
There must have been an incredible transformation in his life.
Yes.
And becoming a witness now, this man is a sign. He's actually become the sign of the dead being raised. He's the poster boy for speaking about raising the dead. Right?
Yeah.
That's what makes us expect it. But also, what would it have meant to him? He's given a second chance. He's now come back to life. I can't even imagine.
And 4 days, where have you been?
Where have you been?
I mean, we've heard testimonies of that. People going to death, encountering God, seeing angels and the saints, and then coming back. He's had one of those experiences.
Yeah.
Lots of testimony to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just becomes, again, one of those things where if you try to explain it, if you try to put reasoning into it, you kind of lose the wonder of it.
Yeah.
I think you just have to see it for what it is. Like, this man was dead. He stank, which means there was the natural biological thing was taking place.
Deterioration, yeah.
Yet here he stands, and you could even think up into the point where they come to take off the wrapping, they were maybe wondering what is it going to look like?
Yeah.
You know, is it
What's
still...
underneath?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And obviously he was well.
Yeah.
He was normal. He was healed. He was...
Next chapter, he's going to sit at a feast.
Yeah, eat
Yeah.
again. So everything
Yes.
works.
Glorious, man.
Amazing.
Yeah, now how wonderful. But just to think again about when I pray and speak to the Father, the reminder, he hears me. But I think there are times when God calls me to pray out loud.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm praying for somebody who's ill, or I'm praying for there's a testimony in our prayer meeting here in the morning where one of the guys who works for a very big business venture, they were in a crisis because of stock exchange, things changing. And that morning, he sat in prayer meeting at the workplace. They've got a workplace prayer meeting. Or he sat in a meeting and prayed, and just spoke out loud. Faith in God. God, this day, please come through. We need you. And that day they had this incredible sale out of nowhere that just suddenly put them back in the black.
Sure.
And people came afterwards and said to him, but you prayed this morning.
There's a witness.
So the fact that you actually speak out is a testimony. You've heard me speak to my Father, then you saw that and you put two and two together. Wow, that's what happens when you speak to the Father.
Yeah. And again, it's not for his sake, it's for our sake. We witness because there are people who are lost who need to see God at work. God will work nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
So it really is important that we don't dismiss the one or choose the one and above the other. They are all necessary.
Yeah.
That you would pray privately, and there would be these promises and conversations between you and God that puts you in awe when things turn out. Oh man, I prayed for that person, and I knew God, you've touched them there, or whatever. So it is important. I think it's a great distinction that is made here. And Jesus himself says, this is for this reason, this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah, they're going to see something and they're going to know.
Yeah.
I spoke to you about it. Verse 45, many of the people who were with Mary believed in Jesus when they saw this happen. How could they not? Okay? How could they not? But some went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Now I think it could be two things over here. That's just me reading there. That some of them could maliciously have gone and said, man, you better do something. This guy's raising people from the dead. Or some could have just gone back in awe and you would not believe what just happened. I didn't think it would, but this is what happened. Either way, the response, then the leading priests and Pharisees called the high council together, the main Kunaina. What are we going to do? They asked each other. Now, this is pretty ridiculous for me. This man certainly performs many miraculous signs. If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him. You want to say, but they must.
Exactly.
Why don't you yet?
Yeah.
Then the Roman army will come and destroy both our temple and our nation. Is that a legitimate concern that they've got over there?
Yes.
The Roman army may come and destroy us.
Well,
what is the problem with Jesus being the Messiah?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they're protecting their own seat of power.
I really think they're more concerned about them.
Yeah.
This is not going to be good for us if he turns out to be the Messiah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so it's a very selfish reaction that they're having, and very much, again, in resemblance to what we read, I can't remember the chapter with it was a couple chapters ago, the woman caught in adultery.
Yes.
They set it all up this way so that they can disprove or, deflect of Jesus' miracles.
Yeah, they didn't have a concern for righteousness or for justice or for the woman or for anything. They
bring it into question.
Yeah.
But the irony of what they're saying here is for the people the first readers of this gospel, John, at that time the temple would have already been destroyed. Rome would have already conquered.
Yeah.
And Jesus was crucified.
And Jesus had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it had nothing to do
Yeah.
with it.
So for them, I think the concern is their view of the Messiah is he's going to be king of the Jews.
Yes.
He's going to liberate the nation. We're going to be a free state again, a free country. So that's the trouble with Rome.
Yeah.
That's not the Messiah.
Exactly.
That's not his aim. That's not his goal. He's not the political leader they're thinking.
Yeah.
So their lack of understanding of the prophecies lead them to think this is a problem. This is not a problem. This is the answer to your problem.
Solution, yeah.
Yeah, it's a sad state for them.
Yeah.
They're completely on their back foot over here. So Caiaphas, who was high priest at that time, said, "You don't know what you're talking about." I like how they chat to one another. I wonder if this was actually recorded in the minutes. And John quotes from that, "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't realize that it's better for you that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed." Now just look at this next verse. I think it's so glorious that at that moment, just like God can take the heart of a king and steer it any direction he wants, he can take the high priest as the symbol who he is, even though at this moment he doesn't seem like a righteous guy. And he can speak through him prophetically into this meeting. He did not say this, verse 51, on his own. As high priest at that time, he was led to prophesy that Jesus would die for the entire nation. And not only for that nation, but to bring together and unite all the children of God scattered around the world. Praise God. I'm in on that.
Yeah.
You're in on that, Waldo.
Yeah.
Hey? But how beautiful that the man could speak something that he understands himself to mean different.
Yeah.
Let's just get away with the problem and save the nation.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Not knowing killing that man is the saving of this nation and everybody else who would believe in him.
So much bigger. And I think you said it nicely by the fact that God can use anyone to bring about that truth, that message. And it was obviously necessary in this moment for it to be established because it was about to happen. And just again, coming from the mouth of essentially an unbeliever,
yes,
saying this, making this statement, it carries much more weight in hindsight, right? Going, man, but what he said, because it says here in John, he didn't know what he was saying.
Yeah.
But we know.
Yeah, and think about the incredible prophetic meaning that the high priest is standing here, who would take the blood of the lamb and sprinkle it on the altar.
Yeah.
He would be the one responsible for that lamb to be killed to make atonement for the nation, right? And he's making a statement.
Yeah.
He says, it's better for this man to die so that everybody can be saved.
Yeah.
The high priest is speaking about the lamb. It's just phenomenal how God comes in this moment in a meeting that's planning murder and says, this is right.
Yeah.
This is how it should happen.
Playing into the real plan.
Yes.
That was ahead of time.
Yeah, and just again, in the previous part now, we spoke about Lazarus and how it would seem that God is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And yet he's got a plan that is far bigger.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. It would seem like this is a real problem for Jesus, but it's the plan.
Yes.
It's the lamb going to the slaughter.
Yes, and Lazarus' death and resurrection in itself, the prophetic sign of God's power over death, which will then ultimately be displayed in Jesus being raised from the dead. So it's all just these prophetic signs and statements and truths that, in hindsight, if you pin it all together, it's just substantial. There's no denying it.
Yeah,
it's just groundbreaking.
Praise
stuff.
God, eh? Yeah. And then just that, I have to reiterate it, that even at that moment, John is writing it now and saying that this was far bigger. It's not just a Jewish story, it's a story for every one of us as Gentiles as well. His children, the children of God scattered around the world. It's just beautiful, that even while we were lost, God came to redeem us. He's lost children to himself. Verse 53, so from that time on, the Jewish leaders began to plot Jesus' death. Now it's in earnest. As a result, Jesus stopped his public ministry among the people and left Jerusalem. He went to a place near the wilderness, to the village of Ephraim, and stayed there with his disciples. Now we're going to see prayer is taking place with just him and his disciples. He's about to have this private time with them. Beautiful, that it's like a public ministry, but he realizes these guys needs to be set up and trained for the role that they're going to fill. They need something special from him. It was now almost time for the Jewish Passover. celebration, and many people from all over the country arrived in Jerusalem several days early so they could go through the purification ceremony before Passover began. They kept looking for Jesus, but as they stood around in the temple, they said to each other, "What do you think? He won't come for the Passover, will he?" So again, just imagine all the murmurings going around, how dangerous this is for this man. Meanwhile, the leading priests and Pharisees had publicly ordered that anyone seeing Jesus must report it immediately so they could arrest him. Just read it as a story once again and feel the tension building up here towards the end of it. Huh? Hey, Waldo?
Yeah, and again, a big factor in it all is the miracle that happened in Lazarus, and it brings this division again to the point where murder for them is the only outcome. That's the only way they see ending off this kind of onslaught on their power as such. And Jesus, in his wisdom, because I believe he could have just forged ahead, but again, being sensitive to the leading and the guiding of the Spirit, he's not afraid.
Yes.
It's not like he's afraid of being killed because he's on his way to the cross. But the timing, which we've just seen in the story of Lazarus, no, I'm not going yet. Even though it seems like it's the right thing to go, I'm not. He goes and he goes and hides, essentially. But not out of fear, in obedience.
Yes,
because you mentioned that's
critically
the
important.
Training part for the disciples. It wasn't just about him, it was about, you just mentioned, for the lost, for this nation of Israel, for everyone.
Yeah. And remembering that this Passover, the timing of God that's going to happen there, the lamb's going to die at the moment where the lamb dies in the temple. It's just everything is perfectly fulfilled. He's going to die on the spot where Abram brought the sacrifice, his son Isaac, and then the ram was replaced. You remember? So everything is on God's timeline. So even with Lazarus dying, raised from the dead, it's incredible how it all plays out. But very important that we just pick up again on what you said there. We cannot make our decisions out of fear. And it would seem like good reason. It's not safe. Shouldn't be there or whatever. God, should I be there? That's how Jesus makes his decisions.
And we know that he did experience the emotions of fear or trembling. He was sitting in the garden, which we'll come to later, where he's praying, and it's agony. So I think it's even just making the distinction between I'm not afraid, but it's not a great place to be in at the moment. It's not the best place for me to be. So I choose a different route. But in Jesus' case, it's more than that. It's a bigger assignment than just evading being stoned. Because he knows that the way that he has to die is also important. And so all of that, I believe, is part of his reasoning and moving and responding. Because he knows what the end is.
And maybe just a very obvious last thing to mention is Jesus did a great thing a wonderful thing. I mean, nobody can deny that. And it turns out through persecution for his worst at the end of the day. There's a plot to kill him. That doesn't mean he did the wrong thing. So just for ourselves as well, if we can hang on to that. Sometimes I'm doing the right thing, and it seems like it turns out bad. This is not God. This is the enemy.
I think you're touching on something very important that often gets overseen, especially because the statement is made that this miracle happens in the natural, and then there's this natural reaction to which we've now seen over the whole period of John's writings. They're consistently trying to kill him off and get rid of him. But being reminded that our battle is not against flesh and blood. There's a spiritual battle. And when these things happen in the natural, the spirit, the kingdom of darkness doesn't like it. And so that's often what we miss. We like you're saying, you didn't necessarily do something wrong, but you're facing a response, a reaction, which would want to bring discouragement, which would want to bring a rerouting or through fear or whatever it may be, or compromising on your faith, or because now you've maybe had the opposite effect. You have had a disappointment. So it's really to understand that Jesus was throughout operating completely aware of what's happening in the spirit realm as well. Because again, looking back to all the statements he's making, and we realize these people are only seeing the natural.
Yeah.
Their responses are natural, but he's consistently pointing them higher. So there's this coming together of the natural and the spiritual. Obviously at the crucifixion, which will be the end point of that. But he's consistently pulling us into that place where we go, as much as we see this happening in the natural, what's happening in the spiritual is so much
There's
bigger.
something more.
Yeah.
There's a bigger reality.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got a memory verse here, close to the end of the chapter, verse 50. You don't realize it's better for you that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed. And that's that statement we hanged on just now from Caiaphas. I think it's a wonderful memory verse because he didn't mean it this way. And God took this statement and says, you don't even know what you're saying. This is a salvation preaching for the nations. So thank you that it is far better for us that one man died, a perfect man without sin, not just for one nation, but for the entire world throughout all generations. Thank you, Jesus, that you were willing to take the cross, that you were willing to take death and defeat it, just like with Lazarus, but even more so. Thank you that you rose from the dead and that we died and rose into new life with you. We bless you, God.